Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. I'm here with your update following what I think has been an awesome last week since we spoke last. I am just really proud of the hospital team right now and our customer care team for amending their practices for history taking and appointment flow, for all the great effort in the treatment room. Resort team, proud of you too, but the hospital team especially has had just a change in their dynamic and a shift in their mindset and is doing really, really well with it. I understand on an individual level that there's been some misunderstandings of why these changes were made. And I'm encouraging, if you don't understand that, you're not feeling whole, you feel like your tank is a little empty or you're a little confused, please speak to your assistant managers about this. It's more of a dialogue than I can give in this video update, but I want you to know, overarching, if this is what it takes, this is the truth. We are super proud of you so far for flexing and taking this on, and I think it's going to make a big difference in how well we do. Okay, couple of announcements this week in the way of our team that I know everybody likes to really tune into. We have 2 team members who are moving on to build new careers. Jacqueline from our hospital is going to be with us for about another 3.5 or so weeks. And Paige from our pet resort is going to be with us for another 2 weeks or so. They're both moving on to new careers, and we wish them the best of the luck and know that we're going to miss them like crazy. Congratulations, you two. Also, Mike Stokes from our nursing team has transferred to our pet care team at the resort and is focusing on patient care there. Mike, we know you'll do great. Super proud of you too. So that was just a transfer. And then finally, Michael Burney of our pet resort team, he has moved on. He's no longer working with us. Just wanted to share that with everyone. I think everything's in a good place there. We will be doing some hiring to replace Paige and Jacqueline as best we can. So we've got those openings for a nursing position and a pet care position that we're looking to hire because of the uniqueness of those shifts that we need. Okay, so that's where we are with some team things. Another team effort that I wanted to commend specifically is that the call center team has begun doing appointment making calls to clients who have services that are coming due, like they have reminders that are coming due, but they don't yet have appointments scheduled. Now, this is a booster effort because if you remember, I've been coaching you all, and the expectation is that before a patient leaves, they should have their next appointment. So the bridge to that effort to be fulfilled is if we have clients with pets who are coming due for services and they don't have their appointment, our call center team has to call them, which is nowhere near as convenient and as clear to the client as you making their appointment before they leave the room or before they leave the practice. But it's a dual effort. The call center team has started doing this and is doing quite well with it. Just wanted to let everybody know that that was going on, and I'm proud of their extra effort here. This week and next week, I wanted to share, I posted this in Slack also. Melinda is away at a veterinary conference. She will be out from today, Wednesday, until next Wednesday. She's doing the conference and taking a few personal days for vacation on the tail end of that. And then Dawn is on vacation from today. She'll be back next Thursday. Dr. Bordelon is still out recovering from his back surgery. He does work one day in the next 10 days, but then he's off for a little vacation after that too. So basically, he won't be back until October 7th. I wanted to share all this information because all these people have replacements for them. I'm the fill-in for Melinda if you would normally go to her for something. I'm definitely available, as well as the manager on call system, so please don't override that. Lauren Amond is a direct sub for Dawn. She places orders. She can take phone calls even when people ask for Dawn specifically. Lauren is your go-to girl anytime that you would reach for Dawn. And then Dr. Bordelon, please don't leave any workless messages for him that you can't manage in a more prompt way for the client's sake, if you can, because he'll be out basically until the 7th. So just wanted to kind of share those things with you. Speaking of phone calls and speaking of being prompt with those things, we have our emergency ring. I'm sure that at some point you've heard it before. Clients can dial in, they'll press 1, and they get to the front of the line, which means the phone rings everywhere, and it's a unique ring. You'll notice it's almost a more alarming ringtone than what's our traditional. So when you hear that, you should know that you should move towards the phone because we want to try and answer that pretty promptly. Well, as suspected, clients, some people are misusing that and they're just using it to get to the front of the line because they don't want to wait or finish listening. So if that's the case, we need to start to try and curb that behavior. This is kind of part of the plan. We knew this would happen. But one thing that I've heard that I really liked was when that phone is answered after that ring, you say, Lafayette Veterinary Care Center, what's your emergency? And that to the client locks in that they've called the emergency line. If you don't feel like this fazed the client and you definitely have understood that they are not calling with an emergency, it's your responsibility to say, I'm happy to help you. In the future, we do try to reserve this line for clients who are calling with pet emergencies so that I'm sure you would appreciate if your pet ever experienced an emergency, we'd be able to get to you first and prioritize you first. So please know, I understand that's a little uncomfortable to say sometimes because it feels like a no, and let's own it. We're not great no people, but this is how we have to manage this. So I'd really appreciate you answering the phone in that way and helping to redirect clients in that way. The good news is that you shouldn't have to tell the same person that more than once, and they get it, and most people buy in. And you'll have a few stragglers who come through the system, and that's okay. Just wanted to ask you to answer that in that way. Also on that topic, I just happened to overhear this the other day when I was listening to someone answer the phone and felt like we could all use reminding that sometimes we get phone calls that are not necessarily an emergency, but they are an urgency, or we have clients with exotic pets who don't want to wait. I'm talking about when we get emergency calls for exotic pets or pets who don't want to wait, that I want you to remember that since Dr. Ryan and some of our other night doctors are the only ones who see those, you should still feel comfortable recommending and referring to the LSU Small Animal Clinic. That number is in Q&A. Also the other day in a pinch, I just kind of Googled it and side noted it to my neighbor who was answering the phone. And it worked. It was great. That was probably what the client needed at that point because they didn't want to wait overnight. They wanted to have their pet seen within the short time. And it's my hope that that person made it to Baton Rouge with their bird who was having an emergency. So again, just to share that that's how we can kind of manage these things. Don't forget about that as an option. Okay, next thing, I posted in Slack, told you I'd give you the why. We have had a few little blunders with pets who have been found, who were microchipped, but that we either didn't take the time to scan them after we found out that the person presenting as the owner was not the real owner that they had found the pet. So in a couple of different situations, we've not followed through as appropriate. And I just really wanted to ground us all with this why. Think about your own pet. Most of us have our pets microchipped for the reason that if they're ever lost, that we'd be able to reunite with them. You would really, really, really be upset and distraught to learn that your pet was brought here and was not identified as a microchipped pet and was treated and ownership assumed by someone else when you had done your due diligence to microchip your pet and to care for them. I feel like we have an ethical obligation to see those things through. Just because someone found a pet doesn't mean that it's theirs. We have an obligation to listen to these cues, and when we understand it, follow through. Moreover than that, sometimes it's not until later in an appointment that we hear these cues. I don't want to make any assumptions about the general public doing the right or wrong thing with pets. I think any time that someone finds a pet and wants to take care of it or wants to assume ownership of them, that's ultimately in the right direction. That's the right thing. So I don't want to fault these people, but I do want to keep everybody honest, and I do want to perform ethically as a practice and as a business. So what I'm proposing is that we scan every pet for a microchip. Even if you know the owner, even if you know that that pet wasn't lost. It's a habit that we create so that we can perform at this level. I think it's the right thing for the right reason is what I'm trying to say. Some practices I've heard doing this through the years, they call it weighing and wanding. And so the idea is that while you're by the scale and you've weighed the pet, which you do every time, even if they came yesterday or last week, you weigh the pet, that you also scan them for a microchip, and that we record that microchip number and confirm. This does a couple things for the client. It validates the idea of microchipping, and so therefore it sells the chip. It confirms that the chip is in the accurate place and that it hasn't slipped out of place, and it confirms that the chip is still active and working, because they operate on about a 1% fail rate, if you didn't know, meaning 1% of microchips will fail to perform at some point of a pet's life cycle. So it's a great statistic. 99% effective is really, really good. But we want to validate, because if a chip ever went bad, we need to explore some solutions, including placing a second microchip, just for the sake of that pet having some kind of accurate form of identification. I put a little holder on the wall to leave the microchip right there by the microchip scanner, right by the scale. There's another one that lives in the pharmacy area for nurses to use, whether they're in procedures or so on. Resort team, you now have very easy access to it in the hospital lobby if you need it for anything. But I would like to promote a system called Weighing and Wanding is Worth It. It covers all of our bases. It keeps us performing ethically. It promotes the idea and the concept of microchipping when it may be a forgotten recommendation of an appointment, or a client may be skeptical about how well it works or how well it's received. You cannot argue. There's no downfall to doing this. We should do it, and we should do it 100% of the time. I want us to start doing this immediately, and I want to require it to be done for every pet every time by next week. So please get used to the idea. When you scan a microchip, look at what it's supposed to be in the computer. If you have ideas of how we could make this process more fluid for you or easier, let me know. But I want to be confirming microchipping. I want to be promoting microchipping. And if you find a pet who's been microchipped, and then the person who's presenting as the owner says, "Oh gosh, I didn't know he was microchipped. I found this dog," you have to follow that through, and you have, again, the ethical responsibility. It is your job as the employee here to say, we need to call and check and see whose pet this is. And you can comfort them by saying, sometimes people abandon their pets and they've had them microchipped. All shelters microchip pets. This doesn't mean that this will no longer be your pet. It just means that we need to pursue it. And pursuing it is the first step of being able to transfer this chip number to you. So we need to pursue that and document. And you can utilize the manager on call or your supervisor for help dealing with that if that situation comes up. But it all starts with weighing and wanding is worth it. So please start doing that. Also, as a reminder, while you're discussing microchips, please remember that a pet does not have to go under anesthesia to have a microchip placed. I understand this is our preference for convenience, but waiting too long to place a microchip really puts a risk on the pet, and I'd rather see that done sooner than later. And also, clients being misadvised, they may not ever put their pet under anesthesia with us, and therefore they may not have an opportunity to have that great recommendation made. So whenever you recommend a microchip, I would try and get that scheduled for that same visit or within the soonest amount of time that an owner would allow. Just wanted to remind of that. Also, please do not schedule appointments on a doctor's procedure day. I'm going to say that slow and loud for the people in the back. Do not schedule appointments on a doctor's procedure day. That is against the rules. I understand that sometimes it's a mistake, but this week we were actually not even able to accommodate an appointment that was scheduled, meaning no one could see that and we had to turn someone away. And that blows my mind. We can't have that happen. So please, if you're making appointments, you have the responsibility of putting those things appropriately where they go. Don't do that. And also, don't approach a doctor to try and get them to do that early, because they never know what's going to happen on their procedure day. We have a hard and fast rule about how those doctors get opened up for appointments, and we have plenty of other availability elsewhere on the schedule that you shouldn't do that. In fact, the only time that should happen is if a doctor directs that to happen on their own, meaning that maybe they've discussed it with a client on their own and they've decided to make that allowance and made the appointment themselves. So please handle that in that way, and don't make that mistake again. It's very important. In light of our software changing, I wanted to give an update for the whole team to understand what's happening. I was a little bit discouraged that we talked about having our hardware and all of our computers replaced for so long in advance, and then some team members didn't understand or didn't know that that was happening. Please listen to this. This is important. We are no longer going to have Atlantis be our software that manages our resort and resort services like grooming and boarding and daycare and so on. We're changing to a software called Ginger, spelled G-I-N-G-R. The word ginger without the E, because, millennials. No, I'm just joking. We are changing this resort software. We're changing this resort software. It's important that everyone understands that and sees it coming. So we have a go live date of October 9th, where one software is going to be taken down and another software is going to be available. And the amount of time that we'll have where we're running the two side by side is going to be really slim, just to that week in October. We're also doing training days on how to use the software because it's pretty significantly different. And that day is going to be October 8th. So Tuesday, October 8th, we're going to have training for the people who would use that, which is managers, key customer care team members and call center members, and key resort team members. And we'll have it segmented on your schedule of when you need to report for that. So those are important for you to know. And then also for everyone else, they'll be trained in little increments throughout that week. The plan is on Tuesday, we'll do the training. On Wednesday, we'll go live, meaning we use it. And we'll have at least two team members from NVA here, just like with the hardware, to deal with little kinks that happen, little things that don't work, glitches and so on. And they will also help us with implementing it, meaning if you went to the training but you forgot how to do something and you've got a client need right then, they'll be on the floor to do that. And the managers who will have been trained on Tuesday, come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll take turns being on the floor to help you with the functions so you can do your job. But everything at the resort is going paperless. They're going to have iPads to manage patient care and mark things off as they do them. So as an example, feeding is a task that has to happen for all pets at the resort. So you would have fed Skipper right in front of you, and then you use your iPad to check it off. And then when you feed the next pet, you feed them and you use your iPad to check it off. So it's very immediate and everyone else can see that that's done. And that's for all functions. Feeding, meds, walking, health checks, activities like playtimes and owner updates and those kind of things all become electronic. And it reminds me a lot of SmartFlow in the way that it works and the information presents, and everybody can kind of tune in because it's cloud-based. So lots of cool things happening that will be really streamlined for the resort, and ultimately everyone can learn how to use this and make reservations and so on. So hospital, you'll be trained on this at a certain point too. Okay, what's coming up next? After we implement Ginger that second week of October, then probably by the third week at the latest of October, we are going to move our call center from the room where it's positioned within the resort. We are moving that room to Apartment D. So the call center will be fully functional in Apartment D by mid-October. This is going to give those team members a bit more comfortable working space. It's going to allow us to install some sound panels, which will help with volume control for them. And it's going to free up some space within the resort that we need for other things to start happening in the way of clinic-wide renovations. It's kind of like playing House of Cards for a minute there, where sometimes you have to move something 3 times to get ultimately to where you want to be. This is the first phase of that. So we're getting to that part of good to great where we're actually physically modifying our space, and I'm excited about it. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to share was an update on our playground. We were very well hoping to be moved into the space by this time, or at least within a month from now, but we haven't even gotten to get started. And y'all, it is not for a lack of trying. I just want to be very honest with you. Dr. Patrick's been working his butt off trying to get this up and moving, and unfortunately there's just a series of logistical issues that have not been able to be worked out. So it is still the dream, it is still the vision, it's still something that we're working towards, but the timeline is really, really way off. So please don't know that it's for a lack of trying or that there's any kind of other issue. I'm being 100% honest with you. It's logistical at this point on how to get that to work within a budget, and that's just how it goes. You see, sometimes people build a house in 6 months and other times it takes 6 years. This is like building a house. So a lot of the modifications that you're going to see us do are going to be more temporary modifications as we wrap up 2019 and move into 2020, for the sake of the delays that we're saying, hey, we still want to move out of the house, but we have to make our living more comfortable in the meantime so that we can keep up. So appreciate your patience, and I apologize for the delays. These are out of everyone's control. It's just a thing. Don't read into it, I swear. Just do be patient. The last thing that I wanted to mention, kind of a last but not least thing, is we've had quite a few clients who are utilizing us inappropriately when it comes to medications. And so sometimes we'll call in a script to a pharmacy, or we'll give a prescription and they'll go to get it filled and be shocked with the price. And so then they call us back, and y'all, this might happen 5, 10, 15 times a day, even right now, but the client calls us back and asks us to call other pharmacies to find a better price for them. It sounds unreasonable, right? It is. But what's happening is, again, when you're caught in that moment and you don't really have permission to say no, you guys are being forced into doing that. And you're doing it, and it's taking up a ton of time, and it's distracting from what we're supposed to be doing or what we need to remain available for. So I'm giving you the permission to say no, and I'm giving you the advice, and I'm telling you how it should be, is that we should say no in the most tasteful way possible. So how you can respond is to say, unfortunately, I can't call around for you. But what I can do is wait for you to call back and see which pharmacy you're choosing to send it to, and then I'm happy to send it right away. I'm mostly talking to the lab nurses right now, but it's every person's game when we all contribute to answering the phones the way that we do now. So everybody needs to get this understanding on board that we don't call around for prices for other pharmacies, other practices. We don't price shop. In fact, it borderlines a threat on making a monopoly when you're a business who calls another business for pricing. Um, we're not going to change our prices based on another businesses. That would be creating a monopoly. But when we make such a practice of doing it all the time, it looks like that's what we're trying to do, and other businesses become offended by that. So we have to be really, really careful to not do that. Now, I don't need you to throw that up in a client's face, but I do need you to understand that we have a responsibility to not do that. The client doesn't care. What they want is to get their prescription for the most affordable rate, and I cannot blame them for trying, and especially asking us to do the work. But you have the responsibility to say, I'm so sorry, I cannot do that. So please find peace with that. Find a way to do it. Know that I've given you not only the permission to do that, but the responsibility to do that. Let me know if you have problems, if you have. All right, guys, that was my update for the day. Sorry I've gotten disconnected. I hope you have a great week. Keep up the great work. Thanks for tuning in and watching this update. Y'all are the best.